Good morning, everybody. We are so privileged to have Carrie Diller with us today. She's an architect and does ADUs and is completely within our wheelhouse of resources that we need to know. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor. Thank you, Carrie.
Great. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. I am going to just put questions on hold till the end. That way I might cover some of your questions in the meantime. And I'm going to hide all your nice faces so you're not distracting. Great. So I am an architect. I started designing ADUs about 15 years ago. Got very excited about ADUs for aging in place as a new idea for senior housing. I became a certified age in place specialist through the NARI program and or NHB program. And it's been a real passion of mine. I think for me as an architect, it's hard to get people to talk about ADUs, but we're getting there. And I think, unfortunately, the pandemic helped us a lot in terms of, getting people to understand where we are. So accessory dwelling units, for those of you who don't know, are a self-contained residential unit. They can be located on the same property with the main house, but they're not considered a second home. They're just an accessory dwelling unit. So it's still a single family home. They have to have their own entrance, kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping area, so that they're independent of the main home. They're known as granny flats, backyard cottages, in-laws, casitas. At a high level, the first ADU laws started to come around in California in 2001. They hadn't been named ADUs yet. And slowly the state has acknowledged, hey, we're going to have a housing crisis. We're not going to have enough housing. We need to look at some alternatives. So every few years, they change the code to make them easier for homeowners to add an ADU. Eventually, they acknowledged that most cities were not complying or encouraging these growths, so they just slowly started taking away the local authority of the cities. So currently, there's, as a rule of thumb, any one of your clients on a property is allowed to have what we call the state exempt ADU, which means it's a minimum of 800 square feet. It can be built 4 feet from the rear and side setbacks. You cannot trigger design review, neighbor notification, or any of that. At a minimum, it can be 16 feet tall. I know like San Jose is very proactive and they allow 24 feet tall. No lot coverage, floor area ratio. So this is really important. If you guys are looking at trying to sell a property and that property has been maxed out and there's no way to expand the house or add anything more, this ADU laws will allow you to get an additional square footage to the property. So it overrides any lot coverage or floor area ratio. If you're within a half a mile of public transit, you don't require parking. And if you're going to convert a garage, like this little one you're looking at is a 1-car garage we converted, that parking can be, doesn't have to be replaced. So this is just what everyone in California has the right to do. Each city can make it easier and allow you to do more. Like San Jose is very progressive in terms of ADUs, but it's just too hard to, like, each one is like a choose your own adventure. So every time you want to look at a new city, you have to reread the code. But in general, rule of thumb, remember that you can have this state exempt ADU of 800 square feet. So ADUs have been so fun since our first one was about 15 years ago. We're seeing how they evolve. We are seeing them for adult kids returning home. They can't afford the Bay Area. They can't get into the housing market. So they can build an ADU in the back property, but have their independence. We are doing a ton for aging parents. So we're doing a lot that are all, indoor, outdoor, no steps, no thresholds, very healthy indoor air quality. And we'll get into more of that later. Some people are doing them for rentals, but in truth, the ADUs are expensive. So they don't always, like the math doesn't always work out for a rental. But we are seeing people use them for caregivers. So they don't want to leave their main home, their neighborhood, but they acknowledge that they can't necessarily stay there independently. And then we're seeing a really fun new category where people are actually, they don't want to maintain their big house anymore. So they're building a new, beautiful, clean and shiny ADU for them that's age and place friendly and renting out their main house to a family for an income stream. So that's been a very positive model. There's different types of ADUs. What we think about often are the detached little cute cottages in the backyard, but there's also the attached ADU. So an attached ADU has some benefits in that typically you can go as tall as the house. You can also kind of play a little game of Tetris. Maybe you don't need all the space for the main house, so you could add the ADU on and then kind of carve up the main house so that you could take a little bit of both. Keep in mind with the ADU, like the attached ADUs will often trigger structural upgrades to the main house. Basement and attic conversions are typically the easiest way to get an ADU as long as you have enough head height. And then there's the garage conversions. The other thing that's unique to California's ADU model is junior ADUs. So junior ADUs are within the shell of an existing house. And they can be 500 square feet. They have to have their own kitchen, but they can share a bathroom. And I always think someone wrote that code wrong and nobody caught it. Like, wouldn't you rather share a kitchen than a bathroom? But the ADUs are a great way for our neighborhoods to add density, get more space, and not change the character of our neighborhoods. Just looking back real quickly at how people used to live, like we used to be very connected right next to each other. It was very typical that old houses would have multiple generations. We were caring for elders. We were caring for family members. And the traditions were passed down. Like if you were farming, if you were a blacksmith, how you did your work and how you did your job was passed down historically through generations, making those seniors so valuable to get all that data. When we think about the Industrial Revolution, all of a sudden it was all this new innovation and technology that was introduced. And what happened is that the younger generations left and the seniors didn't have any value to add. And we didn't really have any systems in place how we were going to care for them. So I think it's just kind of interesting to remember kind of how that all evolved. And then everyone was encouraged to leave where they'd grown up for generations and go build their own house and have this new suburban future. And it's really left our seniors without a lot of options in terms of having people to help care for them. And so I think it's great to start thinking about what we could do in terms of new opportunities. One of the best things for you all for helping your seniors is that new ADUs give us the opportunity to add new inclusive housing, meaning so many of our existing houses have steps up. They've got, narrow hallways, narrow doorways, bathrooms that are very difficult to navigate. And with these ADUs, we can build a new ADU at level, indoor, outdoor. You can see in this one, there's no steps in. So that means you could roll a wheelchair in. The doorways are nice and wide. So if you have a caregiver with you, that they can all get in and navigate. If you look at our existing housing stock, and this study was done in 2018. I haven't found anybody that updated it, but if you look at our inventory of housing, 96% is not age and place friendly, meaning they have steps in, they have those narrow hallways. And so it's only kind of 1% that is in a good position in terms of faucets, handles, electrical controls in a reachable area. And a lot of that can be changed easily, but the number of houses without, with single floor living is like 3.5%, which is a very, very small number of housing. I think there is also a real resistance to embracing age in place design. In my working theory is that aging in place design came from institutional hospitals. It looked very cold. It was a different scale. It never matched your main house. It looked very temporary. And I've had adult kids say to their parents, who were worried about their property value and they didn't want to add a temporary ramp up to the house. And the kids literally said to them, "Oh, don't worry, Mom, when you're gone, we'll take it down." So all of a sudden you've put in this element that's supposed to be an aid and a tool for helping a senior stay independent, but they don't want to engage with it because it's now representing their mortality and they feel like it's making their house look unattractive. But we really thought, let's think about how we look at aging and rethink it. So people born in 2005 are going to live to be 78 years old, they say. I feel like we're already seeing numbers that are spiking, but one thing I love is that if you look at this picture of Whistler's mother, I think she's 68 and well, I'm not going to tell you the number, whatever number she is in this photo, this is Madonna at the very same age, right? So we see all these, interesting stories about stars turning 50 and look how great they are. And so if you imagine like Whistler's mother, like we've reimagined what we can do with our persons, but we really haven't thought about what we can do with our housing. So why can't we take what would be kind of a sad retrofit to this bathroom, but instead build a new ADU that has a beautifully designed space that happens to also be age and place friendly and support aging. So this shower has 0 threshold door to get in. The door is wide enough to get a wheelchair in. There's no curb to get into the shower. There are grab bars in the shower, which match all the other accessories like this heated towel rack. There's a shower that has adjustable heads and a bench that can fold down or fold up. There's also skylights, and I'll talk more about lighting as we get into it later, but a lot of other features. I mean, there's also a real crisis of how we're going to care for seniors. I won't go on that too much, but when we think about different cultures, like Japan never had aging in place senior centers because it was the obligation of the younger generation to care for their seniors. Now those seniors or the younger generation are going to the suburbs or going to the cities and they're leaving their seniors behind. So a lot of things that we can look at. And I think the study that Julie brought up at the beginning is very interesting too. So the other reality is a lot of seniors aren't going to have the money to pay for assisted living. So the prices of these senior facilities are just going up and up. The desire of people wanting to go in them is continuing to decline. And that's where we can get into some better designs for keeping people independent. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about universal design. Universal design is this principle about how you make something the most usable to the most number of people with the least amount of effort. And I always think this is the best example. This is, the original vegetable peeler. And then this is that company OXO. His wife had very serious arthritis and had a hard time using a lot of these original kitchen tools. So this is the evolution of how he designed this tool to be easier for her to use, but then it also wound up being easier for everybody to use. So with universal design, I feel like a lot of the principles are so intuitive that it seems like we don't necessarily need to talk about them. But if we think about these principles ahead of time and we can work them into a space like a newly designed ADU, this space is going to work better for grandkids. It's going to work better for seniors. It's just going to work better for everyone that's using the space. So some ideas, if we look at, this is an ADU garage conversion we did a long time ago. We've got a roll under counter here. We have a nice countertop that contrasts with the floors. As our eyes change, our ability to discern the differences in a countertop and a floor is more difficult to see. We've got under counter lighting here for task lights. And then these upper cabinets, we wanted to maximize the volume here, but our client in this space had a frozen shoulder. She couldn't really reach up too high. So we installed these pull down racks that have a little handle, and you can just open that and engage and pull it down so that she could reach everything. It just giving you more possibilities. So then to couple universal design with age and place design, this is talking about more of how we can design for our bodies as they age. So as I started to talk about before, natural light is just a huge thing. Often you can go visit a fellow senior or a grandparent and you see that their house isn't super clean, but a lot of times there's not enough light on the counter, or maybe there's glare. They can't necessarily see the dirt on that surface because it begins to compress with the floor surface. So making sure we have natural light is the best for our eyes, but having LED light coming in, contrasting our floors with our counters, designing for things in a particular reach zone, having materials that are low maintenance, and then also good indoor air quality. As our bodies get older, our ability to process off-gassing or toxic gases from building materials declines. So we really want to be in a much healthier indoor space. And that's why building a new smart house that's got an accessible entry is a great way to do that. So looking at this ADU, we've got thinking about the ideas of lighting. We've got windows next to the kitchen. We've got task lighting above, and then there's secondary lighting up above here. We've got a nice sharp white counter in contrast to the gray floor. And then we've put a lot of storage on the back of the peninsula here that could all be easily reached if you were in a wheelchair. With these smaller ADUs, there's some different design perspectives that we can take advantage of. Like you don't need bar stools because your dining room table is literally like 2 feet away. So you can use the storage on the back. Then there's ideas of just making space more equitable and flexible. So in this design of the ADU, we put all of the cabinet against the walls. That way you had more open space in the floor plan to either rotate the sofa, have more flexibility of your dining room, but also if people need to try to approach these countertops and they were in a wheelchair, they can navigate things either from a forward approach or sideways. So that just gives you more flexibility. The other reality is that these ADUs are going to evolve with your family. What you might build it for today, most likely is not going to be the use in 10 years, 15 years. So you want to kind of plan for the most flexibility. And then you want to get into ideas of like making things very perceptible, like you don't have to figure it out. You can see that there's a drawer pull on these drawers, so you know there's storage there, and same with the back here. Again, we've got a white counter that contrasts the darker floor. We've got a multiple lighting source. So we've got kind of ambient light, task lighting, a lot of natural light to help, and good airflow and good building materials. So again, if you're trying to adapt your existing house, if you have a really small bathroom, it has a small tub area, it's difficult to retrofit that and often expensive to make it a curbless shower. But again, when we're doing ADUs and we're starting from scratch, we have an opportunity to incorporate these features in for very, they're not going to affect the budget very much. You just have to be mindful of designing them in. The other thing to think about when you're looking at your ADU is how you're going to get in, like where the location's going to be, how you're going to access that ADU. This one, you can start to see there's a ramp here that is flush with the deck and flush with the inside. So in this one, we put a deck all around the outside. The deck serves as an additional room that makes the ADU feel bigger, but it's also completely accessible. There's no steps all the way around. So this space can be used by visitors, by the occupants. Anyone that's coming over can have, equitable space to use. You also want to think about sun orientation, how far away you are from your utilities. And then a lot of times with these ADUs, it's very important to think about how they're going to connect to the main house. This L-shaped ADU, this is the bedroom over here, and it looks out into this yard, but the main living space kind of connects and looks at the big house. So these clients chose to be connected. I really encourage clients to really think about how they want to connect. This is a similar L-shaped unit, but it turns its back on the main house. So the main house maintained its own yard, and then the ADU has its own private patio. And these are secured from one another. So if both families have dogs or, you want to just have that privacy. A lot of times when we're designing ADUs for an older generation, they don't want to feel like an inconvenience to their kids. So they want to be able to have that privacy and feel like they can be out here having coffee in the morning without, connecting to the big house. Maybe they're not ready or they don't want to feel like they're encroaching in their life. These are those same ADUs just from the perspective of the street. So this one on the right is the private that has the big house in the back. And this is the other one where the family chose to make this more of a compound where they could be together, have shared dining, have shared components. Again, capturing that indoor-outdoor space. These popular accordion doors help us, make this outdoor space feel like it's part of an ADU, which can make it feel bigger. And then again, getting in as much light. Maybe we went a little crazy with skylights on this image on the left, but having skylights, nice tall ceilings makes the space feel better and bigger. So these small ADUs can really feel pretty spectacular, even though they're a small footprint. And then I think just thinking about placement, like you have to design an ADU a bit differently than you would the main house, because the main house is often bigger, taller, maybe looking down on the ADU. So we'll often put these higher windows in where you feel like you've got a sense of the weather and you have some fresh air, but you don't feel like your privacy is being stolen, or, you're not in a fishbowl. And then in this one, we've just got a skylight above. So you have a beautiful amount of light. We have a night light, an occupancy sensor that goes on below. So there's nothing to trip on, where you're going in the middle of the night. And then again, a window next to the vanity, so people can't see you, but you can still see out. This is a little one-car garage we've done. This isn't as great for aging in place because we try not to do things that require a lot of MacGyvering, but it just does show you what's possible for a 250 square foot garage conversion. And then we can also get more creative. There's a lot of interesting ways to engage. This again on the left was a client with the frozen shoulder. That's not her, obviously, but there's some really neat equipment you can put in that help you access and gain more space without, taking advantage of those smaller areas. And then on the right, we built in a TV like into the kitchen counter on this one. So as we're approaching these smaller living spaces, we want to really think through how they're going to work for people and how we can be smart about them. As we look at ADUs, and this is old news, but I can't find some good reports, but you can see the number of ADUs in 2013 was 799. This is in California, and they're spiking, right? 2021, we were up to 20,000, and we're just gonna, in my opinion, see this continue to climb. And then I know there's a gentleman on from New Jersey. We're seeing ADU laws in Montana, Colorado, Minnesota. They're going national. So we have the opportunity in our area to be leading this area. But I do want to get into this question because everybody has it. And a lot of people will come to us and say, hey, I've got this garage. Can I convert it to an ADU for, $20,000 or $30,000? In our Northern California area, the answer, I'm sad to say, as a recovering optimist myself, is no. The ADUs are amazing. I think the math works out, but they do cost a chunk of money. What we like to tell people to think about are there 3 buckets, and a lot of companies will only tell you about the one bucket. And so you want to make sure you help your clients understand these different pieces. So we put them into the bucket of soft cost, which is permit fees, architectural fees, engineering. Those can often be, $30,000 to $60,000. Then there's the cost of the building. The cost of the building is the least complicated one to figure out, and it's where you have more opportunity. But what's happening with these ADUs is we're building a whole house in a small footprint. So we're seeing the cost per square foot higher than what you would hope. Because it still needs a foundation and a roof and a mechanical system and a kitchen and a bathroom. All the expensive pieces don't get spread out over a larger square footage. So in Northern California, we're seeing ADUs come in between $350 to $800 a square foot. The smaller the ADU, the more expensive square foot. Again, we just aren't seeing the benefit of that square footage spreading out. So there is a sweet spot we see in a lot of areas of like, if you can get to 750 or that 800 square foot exempt number, you're getting a little bit more bang for your buck typically because you're just getting bigger rooms and that's helping to spread out some of the cost. The final bucket, an important cost thing to remember, is your infrastructure. So if you all are doing a new transaction and the sewer lateral has to be upgraded when they purchase the house, you already know about those. But for the ADU, you might have to upgrade the electrical panel. Technically, new construction in California requires solar, but there is an exemption that most people will qualify to get out of that. You might need to upgrade your water line, and then you have to look at how you're going to connect to the sewer. So typically the ADU sewer has to run down and in front of the main house and connect downslope of where the main house connects to the street. Not difficult, but it can be 130 feet long. And so you have to think about what the cost is. If you don't have the right pitch to drain, then you're going to get into a sewer ejector pump, which one day will fail, gravity won't. So there's some things to think about there. If your clients are buying a house that's already fire sprinklered, then the ADU has to be fire sprinklered also. If the main house is not sprinklered, then the rule of thumb is that you do not need to sprinkler your ADU. But there's a couple asterisks. It's important to remember that the ADU laws have really softened the planning code. So floor area ratio, lot coverage, those things. They have not softened the building code, and they have not softened much of the fire code. So if you have a very deep lot or the fire hydrant out at the street is very far from your house, you can sometimes trigger fire sprinklers as a way, a mediating method to achieving overcoming that by adding fire sprinklers. So I will stop there. We can talk about too. You all are welcome to reach me here. And I also did want to share with you all that we have, I think what's pretty fun. We have a YouTube page that we've got just tons of videos where we walk through floor plans that are done. I finally put my money where my mouth is and built an ADU for my mom. And there's a whole playlist where you can watch her ADU go through the whole time. So a lot of great resources here for clients, for people to understand what things look like. And then we also on our website have just different plans that you can search and look at things for your clients. There are places too to sign up for our newsletter. The ADU legislations are changing wildly and rapidly, and that could be like a whole nother talk we do with you guys. But for example, the AB 1033 is a law that was passed in January that would allow ADUs to be sold as condos. That could be really interesting for your group. For that law to go into effect, the local municipality has to adopt it. So the state said, you have the right to allow your people to sell them as condos. I know Berkeley put their law, they adopted it last council meeting. Haven't heard of anybody else adopting it quite yet. My instinct is, because Washington State and Oregon State have already moved forward on this condoization laws, is that we're going to see that coming. Eventually the state's going to make everybody do it, but I think right now we're in this grace period of like cities can adopt it. But again, we don't really know what that means. Like, if you're going to sell it as a condo, do you need separate utilities? Are you going to want to do separate meters? And Julie also asked me to mention, like, SB 9 is the law where you could take a lot, subdivide it, build a new house, and then on both properties add ADUs and junior ADUs. So you can wind up turning a single family home into like a 6 or 8 family home. That law has not gotten traction. And I think currently there are 9 counties in Southern California that have filed a lawsuit against the state saying that that law's not legal. We were attempting to do our first one in Nevada, but we have an attorney like on our team, like it's like an architect, an engineer, and an attorney, because they weren't following the laws appropriately. But I will stop there and then we can revisit anything you guys want or talk about questions and go from there.
And for the recording, this is May of 2024. So if you're looking at this later, those laws may be changed by now.
Yes.
Well, and so that's so interesting to get your perspective as an architect on those SB 9 and AB 1033, what you're seeing out there, because early on when those became known that they were coming and now they're here and everything, and initially people were having a lot of NIMBY stuff going on. So now it's starting to manifest that it's not really getting traction because of a lot of the circumstances which are required to even to move forward and prove very complicated and costly.
Mm-hmm.
So even though, you know, it sounds great, it's really not working out at the moment. So what do you think? What are you seeing about that? You did talk a little bit about it, but to realtors, you know, so that when we're talking to homeowners, we got an idea of what other industries are talking about.
I mean, I think, you know, I went to a conference like 2 Novembers ago at the state level about SB 9. And I think at that time there was maybe like 4 applications in at the whole state. There's a lot of ambiguity on how you put in the application. There's what the fees are. Like ADU laws, because they started so long ago, and I think people forget that, have softened and eased and like found the barriers and then address them in updated codes. The SB 9 is just, maybe it's going to come back with some energy. It'll be very interesting to see what these 9 counties that have filed suit from Southern California are going to get. You know, it's interesting, like Berkeley banned gas, right? And the Restaurant Association took it up the courts and they've now said you can't ban gas in buildings. So we're seeing things like that turn back. I think what we can learn from the ADU movement is, because California didn't really start it, we definitely are leading it now, but it was Washington and Oregon that really started it. So you can look at the trends there and see what's getting momentum. And I think that's where we're seeing, like, I would imagine you guys probably being able to help your clients sell the ADU as a condo much sooner than getting into the lot split where you could then sell the second lot or the other house. I think the condos is going to really get some more traction sooner than later, and then could be a great way for homeowners or seniors to get a smaller unit at a more reasonable cost without leaving their neighborhood, right?
Carrie, can you share your contact information while we're talking, please?
Sure.
Those are tenants in common though.
Jesse's,
Yeah.
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 Well, that's what it would turn into.
That would be
He would
turned
sell the
into that.
condo, it would turn into
Oh,
that, right?
is it?
Yeah, right?
So
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll have Carrie Shore's Diller's information it's in the bulletin currently, and it will be in the bulletin again next week.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced, but I haven't seen the math yet to how it would pencil out to benefit a homeowner to sell off a unit as a condo. I just don't see it yet. I don't know.
I don't think.
I would say for splitting, if you're.
Carrie, have you done anything with
Well,
med
there's an
cottages
exit.
yet?
With what?
Med cottages,
For everybody.
you know, where they
No,
make it like
the-
a hotel or a hospital?
Yeah. We're trying to plan. I mean, for me, like there was a company called Med Cottage for a while. I don't know if they're still around, but where they put it in, it was temporary. It was used as a convalescing site and then it was taken out. We're trying to make sure that the housing we're putting in is a more permanent housing solution for someone. So let's build it. So there's no thresholds, it's curbless and it's accessible, and then it can be used for more people. But it's more of a long-term housing solution. So I haven't personally, and I don't know, Skip, are they still around? Do you know?
I believe they are, and in the course I teach it, and I think there's a email for it. I think it might be medcottage.com, but I might be wrong. But
So-
if you Google it, you should be able to find some information on med cottages. And I think the part of what you were talking about was the Echo housing that was done in Australia, where it's more or less a modular ADU that's put on the property, and when they're done with it, they can take it off. But the Med Cottage, I thought, was more permanent, but maybe it can go either way. But the idea is the setup is like a hospital room for the clients that need more medical help, and then they can use it in the ADU that way.
So with caps and with universal design, you could make an ADU that very well could receive itself to be outfitted for a med cottage and it turn into hospice or
Oh, yeah.
palliative just by virtue of universal design and caps. So
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
hate to report, I mean, my mom and her partner moved into their cottage in our yard about 2 years ago, and then my mom's partner got very ill in December, and we did, it did function as a hospital room and a hospice center, and you know, it was, the caregivers were so relieved to come in, and they had no steps, and they could be side by side with her getting into the shower without these barriers. And so, you know, the level of care was better, I think, because they were in this environment and her space. And we have gone, you know, when we are designing for someone that has more of a specific condition, you know, we've designed in reinforcements in the ceiling so that you could have a lift if someone can't get out of bed by themselves. So with ADUs, we're doing kind of pre-designed plans, modular and panelized kits, but any of those builds allow you to kind of modify things so that if you need to get to that level of care, that you can design that in. And I think that's often, if you're building new, the opportunities to design those elements in are so much easier than the retrofit often.
Well, that's
And
the
real
beauty
quickly,
behind ADUs, is they are so much more flexible that you can use them several different ways.
Right.
yeah, and now that you mentioned it, so your the modular kits, prefab, construction product. So can you talk just a little bit about that quickly?
Yeah, the modulars are very interesting in that they typically are going to get craned in the backyard. That means they're only going to work for about 30 of your clients. Because they're all the way in the backyard, you need a much larger crane because the arm and the reach of where you're setting the cottage is, you know, you're not just putting it in the front yard if it's a modular home. And if you have a big set of power lines, you know, usually when you look at a street, you have power lines on one side and not on the other. If you have all those power lines, you're typically not going to be a candidate for modular, because the modular units on the semi and the crane all have to get under the power lines, be set up 10-foot clear, and have enough room to swing the modular ADU into the backyard. That being said, if you have room for it, they typically are so convenient. The biggest savings is time. So someone's only going to be in your yard for 6 to 8 weeks, putting the foundation and utilities in, and then finishing out the modular once it's set. So they're very convenient in terms of time frame. They can or can't be more affordable. Sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't. We've also been working on a panelized kit, which is where the walls are coming in sections laid down on a truck and then just rolled into the backyard on a wheel.
Well, that's what I was getting to, exactly that.
Yeah.
Because there is limitations with the crane of a modular. So
Right.
now there are kits that are available to be delivered flat and then erected.
Yeah, and the modular builds have to have a crawl space
Mm.
underneath them because they ship with the floor so that they're steady.
Yeah.
Because they have a floor, they have to have airspace below them, which means they're going to be elevated. So you can certainly figure out how to get a ramp, but you're going to have a good 18 inches of space you have to overcome. With the panelized kits, you're able to install those right onto a slab that's poured in place. So to me, the kits are looking to be like the best. The hybrid that's the best option. It's giving you more flexibility. For us, it's coming in more as a cost-effective product. And
Where's
you
the
know,
stick built? What are you looking at per square foot, do you think?
the stick built,
Well, I mean, so if it's 350 to 800 per square foot for what you were describing earlier, what would be a prefab that comes flat on a truck and is erected?
yeah, the panelized kits are saving between $50,000 to $80,000 per project, which is, you know, a nice chunk to save.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very good to compare, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of how ADUs are catching on in other parts of the country? I mean, this whole seminar has been on California, but what about
Right.
back east and other places?
Yeah, we're getting calls. I just had a call from a client, a potential client in Raleigh, North Carolina. Like I know there's a huge, I know the White House has a council on ADUs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like Colorado's gotten a big movement around them. And so they're catching on. I mean, it's just making the math work. You know, when we first designed our first ADUs, my business partner at the time and I were from Florida and Texas respectively. And you know, in Florida, you could just go down the street and buy a house for $80,000. So you, you didn't necessarily need to build an ADU, but where we're getting into like really expensive cost of living and limited space, I think you're going to see the ADUs catch on more and more. And you're also just sharing the burden and the cost of, you've got the land and you've got the infrastructure. So if you're thinking about it from a multi-generational like approach, it really, you know, like my mom was in Santa Rosa, very close to the fires. She sold her townhouse up there. She paid for 2/3 of the ADU here, but now she lives rent free. And you know, so her income stream is great. And then the other neat thing is she built the ADU on our property. So the money she put into our property is a gift to us, but it's not, there's no tax assessment. It doesn't, you know, we don't have to pay taxes on that inheritance money. It's just, and so it's a nice way to think about legacy also.
What's the time frame
I have
to
a question.
build?
Oh, go ahead, Kathy, sorry.
What's the time frame to build a traditional 800 square foot ADU?
Yeah, they're about 6 to 7 months.
Oh, that's not bad.
They're pretty reasonable. I mean, they're so fun. They're almost like being back in school. So technically ADU permits should be approved in 60 days, according to state law. There's a lot of ambiguity of like, when does the 60 days start? If you get comments back, does it restart? There's a lot of gray area. Most cities are trying. You know, we just went through the cycle of all the cities having to put in their RENA numbers to show how they're going to meet the new housing model for the next 8 years, how they're going to add enough housing. And basically what the state said is that if a city all of a sudden has said, you know, ADUs are going to be the miracle and they're going to, you know, offer all the housing in the next 8 years, the state basically said, well, you haven't really been permitting ADUs, so why don't you put some incentives in place, do some education, show us how you're going to process the permits quickly. So we're seeing a lot of cities really coming around to trying to get them permitted efficiently. So I would say, I try to tell people in general, like it's about a year project from start to finish based on your
That was
decision making.
more along the lines of what I was expecting.
Yeah. So between the design and the permitting and then the build, it's about a year, but there are like, we have several like pre-designed plans. And some cities have a lot of pre-designed plans. So that can help streamline everything. But you know, they always say in construction, there's time, money, and quality, but you have to pick two.
So I have a quick question. Carrie, this is Valerie here. I'm from Keller Williams. So I have some clients that I just sold a home to, that there is an existing garage in place.
Mhm.
And it also has an adjacent office, studio office attached to it. And they're interested in looking at an ADU conversion. So what I'm asking, can you speak to how the process would look for that for them? Where do they start, and you know, what are the steps they would go through?
Sure. So typically, and I can provide, I know Julie's the queen of QR codes, but I could provide one for everybody in this group. So if you want to set up an appointment or send a client to us, I'll know it came from you all. So we can do like a complimentary assessment for them to like look at the property. A lot of times if the garage is all like the slab is broken up, it's all cracked, you know, a lot of times the garages, we basically kind of hold them up or rebuild them completely. Where the garage can be a big value is like if it's on the property line, then you can rebuild it. The state law says you can take it down and rebuild it in kind. And so even though that building on the property line today is not allowed, you can keep it that way.
This garage is only 10 years old, so the old one was completely torn
that's
down.
great.
New slab, trussed ceiling, vaulted ceilings on both sides.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's actually in excellent condition. up to
Well,
code.
that is great. So it's not like the one in my picture. So in that case, they could be in a really great position. The only trick is that we're gonna have to cut the slab to get plumbing in there. And then you just need to make sure that that waterproofing is addressed appropriately. But if it's a good, healthy new building, then you could be one of those unicorns where you can actually convert the garage for, maybe
Isn't there-
$80,000.
Can't you do trenchless plumbing, trenchless construction? I've heard of that.
Yeah, when you
Trenchless.
go down and then, route it out. You just have to look at the cost value, that the trenchless is a lot more expensive, and so it's
Yeah, it
not
is,
always-
right? Yeah, it's just something to compare. So
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
you
So
tell the homeowners, we can either, cut a hole, or we can do it trenchless, and then these are the
Right.
cost of each.
Yeah.
They can decide.
So you might be in a great position, and then that little studio that you said is attached, or the office is attached to the side, you can convert that whole thing to an ADU. I mean, technically, with the way the ADU law is being interpreted today, if you had a garage like that, you can convert that to an ADU. The client could still put a junior ADU inside their main house, and then you could add another detached ADU if you wanted to. Like, that's how the law is being interpreted right now. So if that's a garage, one of the great things that happened a few years ago is that you don't have to replace any parking. So you can convert the whole thing to an ADU. If you're near transit, then you don't have to add parking. You don't have to replace the parking. So it's a very simple, and if you actually have a good, healthy building, then it could be a very reasonable project to do.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I?
I'm so sorry, just
Go ahead.
going back to my original question though, could you please just walk us through how the process would work for, let's use these clients as a model. Say they want to move forward with working with you, they'd contact you as a first step, and then
Yeah.
how do they proceed from there?
They contact us for a first step. Like, if they have the old listing, or they can share images of the garage, we can see a fair amount of information there. We have several fun, like, what we've tried to do is, if we've done an ADU before for someone and it worked well, we put the plan on our website so people can either just buy that plan. We have multiple garage conversions, 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom. So we can then just modify the plan for them. Like, if they like one of these, then we can modify it. We can keep the cost down and we can go faster. If they really want to do something unique, they want to like add a loft, or they want to do something else, then we can do a custom design for them. But what we want to do is have an initial complimentary call with them, figure out what services and support they need from us, and then be able to give them an estimate for our services. We try to be very transparent. We share all of our construction pricing with everybody. We don't do the build. We build the team that will do the build, or it always sounds like because we offer every solution, plans, panels, and prefab, we've tried to come up with a menu of everything a client might need, but we're trying not to over insert ourselves. So if they just want this piece, then they can just take that piece. But we break everything down so that the client has the decision, and then we're kind of like their tour guide on the process.
Right, so what's the process then? They met with you, then what happens?
Then we give them a proposal to say, like, okay, it looks like we have a plan that's pretty close. We'd show them that plan. Like, I can show you. We have a couple other tools that are great that we can, that didn't work. And then we would give them a proposal. We want to figure out what service do you need from us is the first question. Do we have an existing plan that we can use for your project, or do we need to do something custom? And then we would give them a proposal for that, and then we would help them realize the project. So we would do all the permitting, coordinate all the design, submit it to the city, get the permit, introduce them to a contractor.
Right, so then the contractor comes in and does any prep for the site, I assume.
Mhm.
Who pulls the utilities?
The contractor pulls the utilities. And so we'll show the connections, like we would figure that all out on site, but we would figure out, like, we'll show that there would be a trench, like here, for example, this is a 2-car garage that we converted in San Francisco. So we'll map everything out, get the permit in place, and then the contractor would come in and do the work. So we have several different like models for them where we might be able to go faster
Mhm.
and do things more affordably because we have some plans that might be pretty close. You know, like a lot of times two-car garages are 22 by 22 or something, and then we can kind of push and pull the plan. And then if they wanted to incorporate that extra little office area into something different, maybe that becomes a bathroom, or they want to do something like adding a loft, then maybe we're more of a custom. So we want to try to figure out what they need from us. Then we give them the cost estimate for those services and then move forward with the design and permit.
And do you only do ADUs? Do you also do like the auxiliary exterior outdoor room that might be attached to the ADU?
Yeah,
And
we
this-
don't design, we're not good with plants. So we're happy to do, you know, trellises, outdoor seating areas, show like what's hardscape versus what's, you know, what's the built ADU, but if we want to get into real like picking plants and doing landscaping, then we would bring that consultant onto the team. So we'd introduce your client to 2 or 3 landscape architects,
Mhm.
and then they would join the team.
So, you know, they were thinking of like adding a pizza oven and a fire pit and adding an exterior entertainment room adjacent to this
Yeah.
garage studio.
Yeah, so we we call them, so I owned a traditional architecture firm that I started 21 years ago. And then I've just become very passionate about the ADUs, but we'll do the main house. Because often too, we're doing an attached ADU where we're kind of carving up the main house. And then right now we're calling them combo meals. If it's like an ADU plus, we need a better name for that. But so if they want to do something addition, then we can just add that on as additional scope.
I see, okay. So you would assemble the team of contractors that would do that auxiliary work then?
Yeah, that's right.
I see. Okay, great.
Amazing. Joanne, you have a
I have a
question?
quick question. Back to early on, you saying about convert the garage into a junior ADU. And if we do that, does the city gonna require us to build another garage? Or would that be?
No.
No, you don't need
No,
to.
but so junior ADUs are a little complicated. So, is the garage attached to the main house or independent?
Attach.
Oh, great. Okay. If the garage is attached, meaning they consider that the original envelope, you can make that a junior ADU. Junior ADUs have a deed restriction though, meaning that the owner of the property has to live in either the junior ADU or the main house. But you 100% do not have to replace the parking or build another garage. Now, let's say that garage is in the rear of the property, like the one I just showed you, and it's detached from the main house. That garage conversion would have to be considered an ADU, not a junior ADU. Junior ADU has the caveat that it's within the existing shell of the main house. So if your garage is attached to the main house, that's considered the existing shell. But if it's a detached garage, you would have to use, that would be your detached ADU or your main ADU. But also keep in mind, junior ADUs have really been liberated. Like there's, you don't need a fire separation between the main house and the junior ADU. You don't need separate, you can just pull off all the meters. You don't need a separate water heater. Like it's much simpler now than it used to be. So the junior ADU can be a very cost-effective way to get that extra rental space.
Does anybody have any more questions? Dave, Jason, hi.
And
Might
Carrie,
want to stop the
Okay.
recording now, then if we're done.
Well, yeah. So, okay, if we're done with questions, that's fabulous. All righty,
And we had one more question.
go ahead.
I wanted to ask you, so where are you located, actually, physically?
I physically live in Woodside. My office is in West Oakland, just because that's how life worked. But I'm on the peninsula myself.
Okay. So when you meet with clients, are you mostly meeting by Zoom or do you where would they be meeting you physically?
You know, often if it's somebody that's referred from a realtor group that we've talked to, like especially if it's a garage conversion, I usually go out and meet them on site because you
site,
need to kind
yeah.
of see. If it's someone with just a blank backyard, we have a couple really neat tools so where we can show, like, pull some of our designs into their yard and show them what they look like. And sometimes that's actually more beneficial to do on the computer, but if it's a garage conversion or an attached ADU, it's important to see it in person.
Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. All righty then. All right, I'm gonna
Great.
go ahead,
Carrie,
Skip.
thank you so much. We appreciate all your
Yeah.
info.
My pleasure. And always open to feedback. Like if there's like, it's a huge topic. It's hard to condense it down, especially when we get into aging and those things. So if there's future things you guys would like to hear or some like me to go deeper on some stuff or you have any input, I certainly would welcome that.
We'll
Oh,
probably
that
take
just-
you up on that.
Yeah, I have another quick question about your availability. I mean, can you do projects all over Northern California? Do you all over California? What do you prefer?
Right now, we're doing Northern California, and then we have a team member that's down in Orange. So he's kind of covering Southern California.
That's amazing because we do have participants in our group that's all over the state and in Nevada and then all over the country because Cardwell's from New Jersey. So
Yeah. And
so
we're also very
yeah.
open to like, we are kind of figuring out, like, because we've been doing it so long, we want to be able to see how we can offer services outside of our area, but those services would be limited. So we are going to be looking probably for some focus group people to help us like decide if there's some things we can offer in other areas and would that help them or be of use. So
Emerging markets, emerging
Yeah.
markets. Let me just say, emerging markets. If anybody identifies an emerging market that we could bring Carrie in on, that would be amazing.
Sounds like.
Yeah. Where? East
San
San,
Jose.
East San Jose. See, there's one.
Unincorporated county, all the lots are oversized.
Unincorporated oversized lots. Pick
Okay.
that football up and run with it.
That's what I did.
Well, and the other thing we haven't even talked about is, multifamily also allows ADUs. So multifamily properties can have 2 detached ADUs or convert their carports, their like soft stories, their laundry areas into ADUs also. So that's another huge area that's getting more and more momentum.
That is a huge market and that is a market that we are targeting at this very moment. So thank you, Carrie, for bringing that up.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, Jason. Jason, real quickly, say hi and where you're from, where you're sitting at, your geography.
We can do that offline, can't we?
Yeah.
Stop the recording.
Well, if he's
Please.
SRES, this is pertinent to SRES. I think Jason went to the refrigerator. There we go.